Thanks for staying with us. Government has compiled a list of names for a new board for the South African Nuclear Energy Corporation. That list will now make its way to Cabinet. Nexcsa is without a board after the remaining board members resigned just last week. Let's talk about this with Sasha Planting. She is Associate Editor at the Daily Maverick, joining us via Skype tonight. Sasha, a very good evening to you, and thank you for being with us. Oh, there you go. I see you now. So, I want us to begin first with the context of why this is such an important story to watch, perhaps on the same level as Eskom and SAA, for instance.
You know, I think Nexcsa is an organization that often flies under our radar. But you must remember we're talking about South Africa's nuclear capacity. They run a nuclear reactor, essentially, which is extremely efficient. It's never had a problem. They manage all the safety requirements perfectly. But the organization is slipping into disarray. And I think when you're dealing with any kind of nuclear asset, and it has been an asset to date, this can't be allowed to happen. And you've got initially a board being fired. That was in 2018 by Jeff Radebe, who at the time was the Minister of Energy. Then you replace that board and you get an interim CEO. The one interim CEO has already been replaced, and the replacement chairman, who was Rob Adam, he resigned last June. And the four remaining board members, who I think hung in by their fingertips trying to turn this organization around, have resigned now. And it is a crisis. It's a crisis that we don't notice because the lights don't go out or the water doesn't stop flowing. I mean, those are things that affect us in a much more visceral way.
Let me ask you this then, Sasha. I mean, you've got these four board members who are now out. Their relationship with the Energy Minister, Gwede Mantashe, had all but broken down just based on what we learned last week and over the weekend. You suggested that what needs to happen is not just the appointment of a new board, but a complete reconfiguration of Nexcsa. What would that reconfiguration look like? And is the current minister the right person to lead or oversee that sort of process?
You know, Tandakele, I think I'm not going to judge whether the minister is the right person. I think he absolutely is, but I think it requires some courage. I think we have to ask ourselves as a country, do we want to be a nuclear-based? Do we want nuclear in our energy mix? And at the moment, the nuclear in our energy mix is quite small in terms of the last IRP. So if you've decided that nuclear is going to play a very small role, we've got this huge organization. I mean, they employ 1,800 people. They've got fabulous research staff there, but do we really need it? At the same time as they're trying to run a research organization, they're trying to run a reactor, they're trying to comply with all the rules and regulations. They're also trying to be a commercial entity. And you're trying to be, the two things just don't mix. And I think perhaps that's why things are going wrong. So perhaps we can just downscale the nuclear side of things. And you know, our reactor is 50 years old. It's already slightly beyond its shelf life. I mean, it's a low-grade uranium that is processed there, but it's old. It needs to be replaced, which means it needs investment. I don't know. Nobody's put a figure on the table of what that investment would be. What would it cost to replace a nuclear reactor? I think a staggering sum.
All right, we talked about those reports last week about Minister Gwede Mantashe and that resignation by the Nexcsa four board members who were remaining after the drama of 2018. And Mantashe is reported to have demanded a solid long-term plan for the future of Nexcsa, including the viability of 3 different boards for the company and for each of its 2 subsidiaries. On the face of it, I mean, I'm no expert in this, but that does not sound like too absurd a demand from the minister, doesn't it?
No, it doesn't. And I actually don't think there's anything to suggest that wasn't forthcoming, that plan wasn't forthcoming. I think the previous chairman and the board actually did work hard to turn around. They are being quite dignified in this whole battle. I mean, they're actually not, the board members and the former chairman haven't come out and shouted and screamed and said we did this and we did that. They haven't taken their disagreements more public than they already are. But I think there has been a turnaround plan. I think I think it's just a question of neglect, and I think perhaps the Department of Energy, last year being an election year didn't help because nothing actually happens in an election year. But I think the Department of Energy really needs to focus its mind. What does it want here? Does it want a company that can sell these medical radioisotopes around the world, which it did with a certain amount of success? Does it want a company that's really a company in waiting for an insane nuclear build, which isn't actually going to happen? But I mean, that's really what it was.
All right.
They were being forced to keep stockpiles of chemicals. They were being forced to keep staff, all for something that hasn't materialized. It doesn't make sense.
Sasha Planting, Daily Maverick, with the Daily Maverick, speaking to us there live via Skype tonight. She's associate editor at the Daily Maverick.